Hello Chronicles of Riddick fans! In today's video, we'll be looking at the dangerous Necromongers and breaking down every minute detail about them. In the universe of the Chronicles of Riddick, the Necromongers are a militant, death-obsessed faction as strong as an entire empire. Moreover, they're driven by a singular purpose. They want to conquer every world and lead all souls to the Underverse. They're a unique combination of religious zealotry and relentless militarism and are equipped with technology beyond our imagination. They are led by an enigmatic leader who is known as the Lord Marshal, and in essence, they demand submission, failing which the only option left would be annihilation. Their chilling motto is "convert or die," which spells bad luck for those that resist them. However, what exactly is it that fuels their cryptic philosophy and encourages their death march across the galaxy? Stick around as we break down everything about the Necromongers, how they operate, why they're such an unforgettable antagonist, and how they tie into Riddick's story. Before we get too deep into that, we do have a very quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but it means an awful lot to us, so thank you. Let's get started. What are the Necromongers' beliefs and philosophy? The primary belief of the Necromongers is that each verse has its own god, and life is antagonistic to the natural order of the universe. Therefore, all life must be purged from the universe to be reborn in the Underverse. This Underverse is the promised land for the Necromongers, but you can't actually go there unless you've shuffled off the mortal coil. The faction also believes very strongly in the philosophy of "you keep what you kill," and this allows them to take over the possessions of those that they finish off. As such, they trace their history to the Brotherhood of Austeres, a group that tried to distance itself from the world where corruption was rampant. Therefore, they settled on the planet Asylum. However, dissent became common among them, and Kovu, a scientist philosopher and an important person in the group, theorized the radical belief that just like there are different universes, there could be different gods too. He said that monotheism was an unnecessary practice and it should be forsaken for good, just like many other Christian teachings the Austeres had left behind. However, Kovu was relentlessly persecuted by them because of his beliefs and was deemed a heretic when he refused to budge from his philosophy. He was tortured continuously, and the abuse was so horrific that the man lost all ability to feel pain. Soon enough, the Austeres took out their anger on his family, killing and torturing them. Kovu himself would have died, but he was saved by a few followers of his who called themselves Kovulites. However, he was cast out of the world, and he wandered into space with the corpses of his wife and children. While it's not known how long his journey was, he eventually came across a rift in space which was the gateway to another verse. While his followers were afraid of moving on, he did, and only moments later, he emerged not only older, but also quite a bit stronger. Although he had entered the strange corner of uncharted space, maybe to rest his family somewhere that would not be disturbed by the Austeres, he apparently discovered the Underverse, where his family had risen from the dead and walked again. With his newfound magical strength, he exacted revenge on the Austeres for the atrocities they had committed, and as he killed their commanders, he would look at their dead eyes and say, "You keep what you kill." After his victory, he assumed the role of the Lord Marshal, a supreme office. When the last living Austeres bowed before him, he recognized them as a regimented society, but they were still not the military force they became later. He would name the order Necroism and had the most hallowed hall faction built on the tallest mountain on Asylum. What is the Necromonger conversion process? It's interesting to note that Necroism as a sect is a completely converted order. No one has been born into the sect and no one ever will. This is because Necromongers do not reproduce since they don't want to propagate life. Every Necromonger is a convert, and when they undergo the conversion, they receive the mark of the Necromonger. The conversion process itself is quite brutal. Two sharp spikes are inserted on either side of the convert's neck, and this is done because one pain lessens the other. Doing so also numbs the nerves and the color drains from the eyes and skin. This purification ritual is extremely important as a rite of passage to become a Necromonger. They wear burned, tattered, and decayed robes, and to ensure that there is no reproduction, their organs are altered. However, there is no rule against indulging in sexual pleasure, hence the ability to feel stimulated remains unchanged. The Lord Marshal, the leader of the Necromongers. The leader of the Necromongers is the Lord Marshal, and this title is the highest office in their ideological order. Only those who have made a sacred pilgrimage to the Underverse are qualified to hold this position. A Lord Marshal can bequeath his title to an underling, or that underling can take it from him by force. The first course of action of the Lord Marshal is always to take a pilgrimage to the Underverse. The Necromonger leader attains amazing superhuman powers as a result of the pilgrimage and is seemingly half alive, half dead. Their souls are only partially attached and proceed while they move and can also tear apart the souls of other beings. It's tricky to kill a Lord Marshal because of the disparity between their physical and astral bodies. Both need to die for the Lord Marshal to perish. How are Necromonger troops and equipment designed? The troops of the Necromongers are very well trained, and due to the fact that they consider death honorable and feel no pain, they are extremely effective. They don't believe in having clean armor because to them, the greater damage to the armor shows how great a warrior truly is. The troops do wield guns, but consider the use of melee weapons more honorable. The gravity gun is the primary weapon of the Necromongers and comes in different varieties. Some look similar to rifles, while others resemble smaller pistols. The pole axe is a ceremonial weapon used by the infantry forces. These look like pendulum-style guillotines and have a spear tip at the other end of the axe. They also use lenzors. What is the structure and purpose of the Necromonger Armada? The fleet of the Necromongers moves from planet to planet and system to system, and a comet usually signals their arrival. The Armada started taking a concrete shape under Kovu after he journeyed to the Underverse. Oldvorn the Builder started building a bigger and stronger armada after he was given charge by Kovu. However, the new armada arose from Asylum and chose Naphamil to replace Oldvorn. Naphamil had the necropolis unearthed and entombed in the Basilica. This travels with the armada on its journey through space. The command ship is known as Basilica, while the sarcophagus acts as the troop transport. The fighters provide aerial support for the army. How did Necroism begin and develop under Kovu? We've already discussed the emergence of Necroism under Kovu, so now let's take a look at the first regime underneath him. According to Kovu, the beauty of the Underverse was such that life everywhere else seemed to be repulsive and mutated, and he felt an intense need to get rid of all of it. He viewed it as a spontaneous mistake and an outbreak that needed to be corrected. The natural state of life was nothing, but death and what came after death. While Kovu and the other Necromongers were also a part of this grand error, they were duty-bound to stay alive and to see the end of life across the universe. Kovu chose a successor in Oldvorn, who had laid the first and last stone of the necropolis. They set out to return to the Threshold and see the Underverse with their own eyes, and the journey took months. In fact, some in their company started doubting the existence of the Underverse in the first place. However, once it was found, Oldvorn was mesmerized by its appearance and described it as being surrounded by the great tidal forces of space, treacherous to navigate, but at the same time exotically beautiful. It took them a long time to get near the Threshold as well, and when they did, Kovu ordered everyone but Oldvorn to march on with their backs facing the entrance. Since no one but a Lord Marshal can cast a look into the Underverse, Kovu and Oldvorn stood on the threshold, both gazing into the beauty that lay before them. Words were exchanged, but to this day, no one knows what they were, and Kovu marched along inside the Underverse and was never seen from again. What changes did Oldvorn bring to the Necromongers? Oldvorn was intent on never again losing his way to the Underverse and decided to build navigational markers to make the journey easier. Once this was done, he initiated the construction of a portal around the threshold, and this was a unique force that could resist the vortices of space and open the threshold forcefully on demand. An officer was tasked with guarding the threshold against other races and was known only as the Guardian. This person and his legion would repel any non-Necromonger if they wanted to go into this holy place. During the Second Regime, a controversy arose about the question of the very existence of the faith. Since the Necromongers were not devoted to non-life, how could procreation be legal for them? As a result, reproduction was banned. However, this prohibition also brought about the very logical question of the faith dying out, since there would be no reproduction. Therefore, the need to gather more and more converts became inevitable. Although Oldvorn was an older man now after having spent most of his time building the portal, he decided to gift the Necromongers the greatest armada ever built. A young commander full of faith and an ardent follower of Kovu named Baylock was given the responsibility of handling the manpower needs, which were tremendous. While his methods were somewhat questionable, he was generally respected. Oldvorn did not see the first ascension since he chose a successor and chose ritualistic suicide at the edge of the threshold. Who was Naphamil the Navigator, and how did the Third Regime unfold? Naphamil was a talented cartographer who quickly rose among the ranks of Necromongers and laid the foundation of the campaign, which is the systematic plan to purge life from the universe. Naphamil ordered the necropolis to be unearthed and entombed within a massive ship known as the Basilica. The Third Regime was somewhat short, but it did well to spread the word of their sect and gathered converts by the thousands. However, the swell of converts made it necessary for an initiation process to be in place for them, since merely bowing before the Lord Marshal wasn't deemed to be enough. Thus began the pain-deadening act of the Necromongers, which was just a whisper of what Kovu had experienced at the hands of the Austeries. Just like how he was tortured to the point of complete numbness, new converts were pushed through a process that would make them feel no pain. The office of the Purifier Principal was thus created to overlook the conversion. Despite these, the regime was marked by a lot of infighting among followers and converts, and people started looking at Nephilim as more of a planner than a leader. He was finally killed in a dispute with the then commander Baylock. This was quite a controversial event, since it was the first time a Lord Marshal was dethroned by violence, and people were unsure if Baylock deserved the position next. However, the teachings of Kovu ultimately prevailed because Baylock insisted that he could keep what he had killed. Now, the Necromonger Society knew two ways of ascension: appointment and murder. How did Baylock the Brutal and Kryll shape Necromonger society? Baylock was the last Lord Marshal born to Necroism and made planetary subjugation a norm during his time. Moreover, he believed that it was not enough to just gain converts; those who opposed conversion should be reduced to dust. Baylock would have faced a lot more success had it not been for the Cathodocs, another militarized sect that was potent enough to challenge the Necromongers. They were also looking to gather converts, and when they clashed with the Necromongers, a full-on battle broke out. The Cathodocs sect had more advanced weaponry and were on the verge of winning the war. However, Baylock would have none of it, and refused to back down, saying that even though God was on the other side, the Necromongers believed in many gods. Kryll was a technical officer in charge of an emerging order within the Necromonger Society known as the Order of the Quasi-Dead. They were monk-like ascetics who deprived their body of almost all nourishment and were extremely powerful due to their strong mental attributes. Kryll offered the services of his quasi-dead to Baylock, and this dramatically changed the course of the war, with the Necromongers swiftly defeating the Cathodocs. However, Baylock died in an accident during the war, and this led to chaos regarding the appointment of the next Lord Marshal. His corpse was sent to the Guardian to be dispatched to the Underverse, where the Guardian said that he had heard him stir and speak, and named Kryll as his successor. The Cathodocs were defeated, and despite their strong faith, most of them readily accepted Necroism, and a few of them even went on to become respected warriors. Kryll overruled the Necromonger prohibition on the erection of personal icons and had a statue of Baylock built where he had met his end. Kryll was extremely mindful of the challenges that he would face, and he strengthened the Order of the Quasi-Dead, who would be 5 individuals who could probe inside the working of any man's mind. The Cathodocs weaponry was fused with Necromonger technology to create extremely advanced weapons. Kryll passed rather unexpectedly, committing ritualistic suicide. A pyrodoc was found next to him by a trusted doctor known as Zhylaw, who was named as the next successor. What were Zhylaw's key achievements and his ultimate downfall? The document that named Zhylaw as the next Lord Marshal was under contention, since many believed he was complicit in Kryll's sudden passing. However, Zhylaw was exonerated, and those who spoke against his ascension were persecuted. In order to keep his succession legitimate, Zhylaw had the document stored in the most secure vaults under tight security, where it would remain for generations to come. He formulated numerous battle icons to mark the battles and the victories of the Necromongers. The battles that happened on the planets of the Coalsack system and Aqualand only had the battle icons remaining, while everything else was reduced to dust. He had launched a devastating campaign against the Aqualands and ordered the destruction of Aquila Major with a massive bombardment. At last, he ordered the invasion of Hellion Prime. After he converted Kyra, he taunted Riddick and made him agree to a one-on-one fight. Although Riddick did manage to make him bleed, his powers were nowhere near Zhylaw's level, and he was quickly overpowered. However, while he was distracted, Kyra stabbed him in the back. Vaako then tried to kill the weakened Zhylaw, but he wasn't successful, and Zhylaw ended up in front of Riddick, who was waiting for his opportunity. He stabbed Zhylaw in the head, killing him and becoming the de facto Lord Marshal. What role did Riddick and Vaako play in Necromonger history? Riddick was truly a reluctant leader, since his ascension as Lord Marshal of the Necromongers was something he didn't envision for himself. He led the sect for 5 years, but refused to go to the Underverse or conquer any more worlds. Riddick was a Furian, and his kind was destined to be the downfall of the Necromonger Empire. His position as the Lord Marshal somewhat fulfilled this prophecy and disrupted the rigid culture of the Necromorphs. He eventually passed on the title of Lord Marshal to Vaako in return for a way to his home planet of Furia. However, he was betrayed by Crone and left to die in not Furia. Following Riddick, Vaako became the Lord Marshal, fulfilling the desire he had held onto for quite some time. He turned the Armada towards the threshold and entered the Underverse. Marvelous verdict! The Necromongers are more than just the antagonists of the Chronicles of Riddick. They reflect the power of unchecked zealotry and ambition. Their apocalyptic ideology, combined with their unyielding militarism, leave a legacy of destruction wherever they go. We hope you enjoyed the video, but let us know in the comments who your favorite Necromonger is, or what other Riddick characters you'd like us to focus our videos on. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.